We have another re-release of an Eager to Know episode. This one is really good. It is, if I do say so myself, it is with a voice actor named Joe Bianco. And we have a really interesting conversation. Voice acting is something that I knew nothing about. So these are always my favorite conversations when I am talking to someone who does something that I know nothing about. And I really enjoyed. I just re-listened to it. I really enjoyed it. So please listen to it all the way through my conversation with Joe Bianco. When did you realize that your voice was something that is, I don't know if it's different or it's something that you can use as a tool?
Sure.
When did you discover that? Before puberty?
Puberty was when I discovered it. We were in sixth grade and it was choir. I loved choir, and I was I don't want to say typical because that's unfair to other artists, but I was the chubby, not good at sports, socially awkward, not like bullied, not a bad childhood by any means, but just kind of like, oh yeah, there's Joe, he does things, I guess. And I was like smart. That was my thing. I had good grades. I was smart.
Okay.
But no kid wants to be smart. They want to be cool. It always felt nice. I liked the praise from my parents, but I was like, I wish people, liked me for other reasons.
Yeah.
I went through puberty and we were in class and my teacher goes, geez, you're a bass. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
And so then they sent you down to choir?
Well, so she goes, can you sing this line? And I'm like, maybe. And I'm starting to talk and she's going, your voice is so low. And I just never noticed. And the more I changed and the more my voice went through changes, like cracky, the lower it got, and people would just be like, man, you sound like my dad on the phone. Or I'd pick up the phone and people would be like, oh, Mr. Bianco, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, no, you want me to get my dad? And then, oh, you sound just like him. I'd get like a summer job, something like a cashier. Someone would step out, have a nice day, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, you have such a nice voice. And after so many times of hearing it, I stopped believing that people were just being kind, and I was
you thought there must be something to this.
Yeah, I was like, maybe they're not like just BSing me. Like maybe I do have a neat sounding voice.
So you have a low voice, and yeah. I don't know anything about like the area of like voiceover work and voices. Is a low voice something that is more universally appealing?
Used to be.
It is, because I feel like when I'm listening to ads now. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's not necessarily a low voice.
And you're right. Yeah. About 10 years ago, they stopped. They used to do this thing where it's so funny. We're at the SCA conference. I've been talking about this all day with people. They used to anthropomorphize products. So
what is that?
So let's say you've got my go-to example is so I'm a Scotch drinker. Johnny Walker Black is a Scotch. It's the number one selling Scotch in America. And years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago, you look at commercials for Johnny Walker Black and it's all aimed for older white businessmen. Because the thought is they look at the bottle of Johnny Walker and they say, okay, if this bottle were a person, what would it be? Well, it'd be you think Mad Men aesthetic. Oh, it'd be an older male, and they'd have a deeper, smoky voice because if they drink scotch, maybe they smoke cigars, and so you look at these commercials for Johnny Walker Black, and it's all these old guys being classy. And when I drink my Johnny Walker, but the reality of the situation is that's not who buys it. So nowadays they look at the demographics and they go, well, who's buying Johnny Walker Black? Well, old white rich dudes aren't buying it because it's not that good of a scotch. It's not a single malt. It's not a high profile bottle.
So it's now, is it like more youthful?
It's going to be young people.
So now they do a more youthful.
And it's going to be out because nobody is sitting there going like, oh, I can't wait to taste it. People want to be heard ordering it. So you go to the bar and you go, young guy with the suit, says really loud, Johnny Walker Black, and then in the commercial, 9 models look at him like he's very attractive, and then that's the end of the commercial.
So would you do a voice? So if there was a television commercial with a model, would someone voice over the voice?
Sometimes if it's for what was it? It was BMW or Mercedes, one of the two. I voiced this like gorgeous German model's like inner monologue. Really? So there was this guy who just was like looked nothing like me. It was like totally Brad Pitt, beautiful. And then I'm the guy in his head like, oh God, when I drive my BMW and I'm going
Right,
to
right.
work. And I'm like, this guy must have sounded terrible. Why wouldn't they
Yeah.
just use his
Yeah.
voice? Like, you know?
So I did notice that a lot of the voices that I'm hearing are not, they're definitely not deep voice males. They're like younger, more
Yeah.
approachable,
Yep.
almost
That's it. That's
almost
it.
a somewhat effeminate, not effeminate, but not intimidating
Yeah.
male voice.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing. So that's like the big thing now?
That's the new thing.
All
Yeah,
right.
you get when we read our specs, the specifications for the auditions, they will go as far. Things you'll always see are casual, conversational, and you'll even get ones that say non-hyphen announcer, and you'll get the full sentence of just we want a voice actor who doesn't sound like a voice actor.
Okay.
And that is by far the most popular spec right now.
Right, right.
And it's interesting because it's harder. It's so much harder than just going, well, I'm doing the commercial copy and I sound nice and in a world, one man, blah, blah, blah. That's a little easier because, if you got the pipes, my older buddies in the industry.
And the control.
Yeah, if you got the pipes and the control, it's great. That's simple. It's connecting the
it's easy.
dots.
Yeah.
But now they're like, oh, we want the acting.
Yeah.
That's why
and acting like it doesn't sound like you're acting.
Yes. Yeah, the big one is we want you to sound like you're talking to your friend.
Yeah.
Because a recommendation from a friend is more, people are going to trust that more than they're going to trust a recommendation from the guy who sounds like this on the radio.
So when we're watching movies,
Mm-hmm.
how much of like a male, a male in a movie, how much of it is his voice? Like how much of the success of, I don't know, I think of anyone, Brad Pitt.
Sure.
How much of it is his voice?
Sure.
Is that a big part of it? I never really thought about it.
Yeah, I would say lots of people who come to mind. James Spader comes to mind. All these people are, take their voice away, give them another voice, great actors. But I think their voices, like that. Alec Baldwin has done a lot of voice work. Tim Allen, I'm pretty sure, does all these Pure Michigan campaigns now. And what's fun about a celebrity is because you're a celebrity, you're a brand now. And so like Morgan Freeman, like I'll be doing a spec and it says references Morgan Freeman. What they mean is they don't want you to do a Morgan Freeman impression. They want you to sound like the voice of God.
Okay.
Because when you think Morgan Freeman and that the movie he did, and ever since then everyone's like, oh, he sounds like God. And so that they want you to bring your omnipotent, calm, older, soothing sound as opposed to doing an impression of it. So, like Tom Hardy's done a lot of stuff with that, with weird vocal ranges. And American actors, we don't get away with it as much. A lot of British actors, when you look at all their character work, have this myriad of different voices.
But can you be because I associate success as a actor, a big part of it is looking a certain way or having a look that is appealing to people. Mm-hmm. I mean, are there any actors that are successful that maybe not have a traditionally appealing voice?
I would say someone like Ron Perlman. And he was talking about, when we did Sons of Anarchy, that was something he talked about. And he said, I got this sound. And what was the other one he did? He was the devil in some like comic book movie. I don't know comic book movies at all, but yeah, he go, they'd hear me and they'd go, oh, you sound so, but you look all grizzled and
Right.
and terrible and everything like that. So come back to us in 30 years when your physicality matches your voice.
Okay.
And then we could start giving you the parts that you are for, that you need. Matching is a big part of it. And I think
What is
matching? I think it goes both ways. If you're a super tough looking guy and you've got a voice that doesn't match your body,
like Mike Tyson?
Like Mike Tyson.
Right,
yeah, I think unless you're making the choice of, oh, here's a super tough guy who sounds kind of squeaky, he's not going to be in the line for any of those just like bodyguard roles or cop roles or I'm a thug guy role. All those little things. Yeah, I think make a huge difference. But I think a good actor can manipulate their voice, and that's something that I think is getting more popular in America, because more celebrities, when they get these vehicles, Meryl Streep, all these people like that, they're going, I want to make some more wacky choices, some more bold choices. And I think actors in the UK do that all the time and get away with it all the time. And I think now maybe again we're starting to be like, oh, we don't have to find, there is versatility is a thing.
Right, right.
I think a lot of people forget that because it's such an oversaturated market. It's like, well, we can find somebody who looks perfect and sounds perfect if we just hold enough auditions.
Right. There's probably something to it that it is a numbers game.
Oh, absolutely.
Me not knowing anything about any of this.
Absolutely.
So we're here at the SCA conference,
Yeah.
which is about guiding people to use arts, artistry, being an artist for a living. What are you telling people? Are you doing panels?
I just did a panel on pricing, actually.
Tell me about what is the general thing that you are able to tell people.
Well, for voiceover, it's easy because there's a website. It's called GVAA, Global Voice Actor Academy. And what's great is when they're like, talk about voiceover pricing. I'm like, great, I could do that with a link. And then
there you go.
It's got a whole, and it's an extraordinarily comprehensive menu. And the way that voiceover is priced is you'll take, you got to pay them for the session. So if you're hiring me for a voiceover, you got to pay me for going to the booth, and you got to pay me for my time. And you've got to pay me for how long you're going to own this
Asset.
Yeah, this asset. And then you have to pay me for who's going to hear it. So if I'm going to go in the booth for an hour, you give me a couple $100. If only people in Bloomington, Illinois are going to hear this commercial, then you only stand to make maybe several $100, $1,000. You only have to pay me a couple $100. If everyone in the greater Chicagoland area is going to hear this, because you have stores in the greater Chicagoland area, now we're going to add another zero on there. You're going to have to pay me a little more if this is a national commercial, if I'm doing something for Starbucks.
So you're providing guidance on the pricing.
Yeah, how to price, yeah. And then language too and stuff like that. And my favorite thing is when budget comes up, I like to go, well, what's the budget? How much have you allocated? And then they'll say a number and I'll go, yeah, that'll work.
So are there a lot of people that are looking to get into voiceover work?
So many.
So many.
So many.
Why? Like not that it's a bad thing. I'm just curious.
The money's excellent.
The money is excellent.
It's excellent. Yeah.
Really?
It's really good. You don't work a lot. And my wife, well, she's like, you have the stupidest job. And I do. I have the stupidest job. Because, I'll go, and if you get the right job for the right company, you'll go in and you'll say, this is true. This is such a random thing. I think it was handsaw. I had to say the word handsaw. That was it. 3 times in a row. And the guy gave me like $160.
Okay.
And he was like, I just need it for this commercial. And it's like, great. So I went in. I mean, the whole thing took about 2.5 minutes. And then you work for someone like Dyson. You get the booth downtown and they've rented all this stuff, and you're like a tag at the end of a commercial. You say a tag, you're in there for 15 minutes. You've said it every way under the sun. There's like no possible way you can like give them more options.
Right.
Because everyone knows how much you're getting paid. They're going to use you.
Right, of course.
So, you've done it every possible way under the sun, and they go, great. 20 minutes later, they say, hey, we're going to use this for 8 commercials at $1,000 a piece. You just made $8,000. So but they don't come very much.
Understood.
Yeah, that's the thing. And most of your job is finding work, like so many of people I'm sure you talk to.
What does that feel like, getting paid for?
Oh, it's so weird.
Is it weird? Is that weird?
What's weird? Because
do you feel like it's you? Do you feel like it is talent?
No,
do you feel like
not
it's?
at all.
Do you feel like it's luck?
It's luck of what's broken, and I can get it from look. If you're going to be the name brand of something, if you're like, I mean, this is on camera, but I think the point still stands. You got the gal who plays like Flo and all those insurance commercials. That's her career, man. No one's gonna look at her and be like, oh my God, I want you to play Juliet in my production, because the whole audience is gonna sit there being like, this is Flo, this is weird. So when you get that much acclaim and you're lending your face, or in my case, your sound, to a certain product, you could really pigeonhole yourself. And then so on top of all this money, you get paid for something called exclusivity. So if you work for a bank, like I've worked for West Suburban Bank, and I did a bunch of commercials for them. And part of my deal was that they say you can't do any bank commercials for them.
And they give you money for that?
Yeah, and I say, well, if I'm gonna lose the money, you've got to compensate me for it. So that's kind of it's for the bigger jobs. When you think these people stand to make hundreds of $1,000s off this commercial, when you look at it that way, it seems pretty fair that you get
Sure.
such a large percentage of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you are the perfect person for the job, and if your voice is really going to mean that $50,000 more gets spent in this company, then like, yeah, I could see how it's worth it.
So if you're working for a big brand like a Dyson or something, you're actually working with an advertising agency, because
Yeah.
Dyson is in the business of vacuum cleaners. They're not in the business of advertising.
Well, a creative team usually. So
but it's a creative team at Dyson or a creative team at an advertising
it's
agency?
usually at Dyson. It's usually through the client. Well, I should say this. There's usually somebody in the room. So you're on the booth, and you're on one side of the glass. You got your mic and everything, and the other side of the glass, which can be incredibly nerve-wracking when you're starting out, is like 12 people
Oh my
in
God.
suits, and you can't hear them. So here they are talking, and all you're seeing are mouths flapping. And of course, you do this long enough, you start to realize they're talking about like a YouTube channel or something. They're not even talking about you.
Yeah.
You know, they're going, "Oh my God, the traffic is just terrible." And then they hit the button and they buzz in. And they go, "Hey, can you do a little faster this time?" And then they let it go. Then they go anyway. So the traffic is, and you're sitting there being like, "Do they hate me?
Right.
Am I terrible? Do they regret hiring me? Like, what is going on here?"
Your brain gets away from you.
Absolutely, yeah. You're like, "Oh my God, what is?" But no, nobody cares. And so you get to go in there, and there's usually somebody, a representative of that, the clients in the room, you know, like any sort of market research, and they're the ones who you have to appease. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting to this is because I worked in for like agencies before.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we were I was a project manager. I wasn't a creative
nice,
person,
yeah.
but a lot of what we worked with was visual stuff, like visual design, branding, logos, information design, user
cool.
flows, things like that.
Yeah, nice.
So that's something that people can relate to but I feel like voice that would be weird to be asking someone for their opinion on that. It just seems very odd.
It's super
to me.
subjective.
So what is that like? Because what I'm thinking is people wouldn't be experts in that, so they just got to go by their gut, right?
Yeah, you're nailing it, man. You are right on. Yeah, so you do a session and you get in, and more often than not, you'll walk in and you'll do what they want. And now, like I said, there's this kind of conundrum where you go and everyone's there and everyone's traveled and hours and thousands of dollars, and you go and you give a read, and it's like, well, that was good.
And then there are other people lined up to do the same thing.
Well, they booked you for an hour is the thing, so they paid for all this stuff, and now you go, you do your read, and they go, great. What else can we get? What are all the variants under the sun we can have you do? And then and then sometimes you'll be like, oh, I really want to do it this way, and then by the end of the session, I swear almost every time your last read sounds exactly like your first read, because it's just this big circular thing of like, well, we hired you because of this and this. You go in, you do that and that, and then they go, well, we got more time, let's try this, and then by the end they go, you know what? I think we found it. And you're like, the first thing we did. the thing you brought me in for. Right. Brilliant. So, and you learn to just you could get frustrated with it, but why? It's still a good job. You're still having fun. It's still pretty easy. So yeah, a lot of that happens. And you do get that where someone's like, I really want to hear it this way. And you do a little quicker, you do a little angrier, a little funnier or whatever. And you build up the bank and you hear the commercial, and 99 times out of 100, it's your first take.
Do you encounter people in your everyday life where you're thinking, this person has the chops to be a voiceover person?
Absolutely.
Do you ever say anything to them?
Sometimes. Yeah. I was a little, I've been a little, there was a period when I was slightly inundated when I got my initial bit of success. When I was living alone, so I was big on social media. I loved social media. And I would argue it was a little more healthy at the time, and I was very proud. And again, I was a single guy, so I would post all my successes and stuff like that. And it got to the point where, like, if somebody who I hadn't talked to in over 3 weeks was hitting me up, I knew eventually it was going to be. So I was thinking about getting into voiceover, and so I took a break from being like, "Hey, have you ever tried this?" Because it was like, I am teaching so many students and friends, I'm like too much of it.
Okay.
But if I ever run into like a fellow actor or something like that, and they just have this great voice, I did it the other day. I did a small project with a company, and it was a little read through, and I just came up to this woman and I was like, tell me you do voiceover work, like in some capacity, because I would listen to you read the phone book. And she's like, oh, I've done a couple, and we chatted about it, and
Oh,
I pointed her in
nice.
some directions of places to go. But my wife notices too that's how I remember people is they'll go. She goes, you describe people by how they talk.
Interesting, because
Yeah,
that's something that you are
yeah, and
attuned
I
to.
never thought I would be.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
I
know,
mean,
yeah.
but if your brain is being used in a certain area,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to develop that in that area.
Absolutely.
Good or
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
Good or bad. Because
Yes,
if you're
yeah.
spending out your brain,
No kidding.
if your brain is in places that it shouldn't be,
Yeah.
you are going to be developing that.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So
yeah.
I'll remember that guy. Like, yeah, he looked like that, but he kind of sounded like he kind of talked like your dad and Timothy Oliphant, like if they were like from further south. And she'll be like, why do you remember people like that? I'll be like, I don't know. That's the print they leave.
Right.
I love that. I don't know. It's fun.
Are you, where are you from?
I'm from the northwest suburbs.
Okay, so do you have an accent at all?
A little bit of a Midwest. The biggest one that I need to pay attention to is go to the store as opposed to go to the store.
Okay, and now you could be used for a national campaign.
Yeah, the closest standard North American is when folks in other countries want to do an American voice, they will adopt a dialect called Standard North American.
And where is that mostly from? What is
It's mostly, I think the last study pinned it somewhere in southern Indiana.
Because I feel like in Chicago is pretty neutral. I'm from
yeah.
Boston, so we have an extreme accent, very extreme. And
I've done a gig
Maine,
with the Boston.
New York, but I feel like it's pretty neutral here.
This is about as close as you can get. Yeah, and like I said, little things like the to is a big one that some clients will point you out on, and every now and then we'll get a little nasally, with to give you an extreme example, like the Polish sausage and stuff like that, like we'll get a little bit in there, but that's really it. A lot of other people, I've got to do a lot more adjustments on, where it's like, well, if you want to be that standard North American announcer, the draw's coming out here, or your Fargo's coming out a little bit too much up here, and it's like we gotta elongate this, smooth it out. But nowadays too, like we were talking about earlier, when they want that real sound, localized dialects and things like that are great because people go, ooh, it's a real person.
Right, right.
So now that sort of stuff is much, much less important than it used to be.
What is less important?
Having that perfect standard North American.
So you're saying things are becoming more localized?
Yes.
Oh, they are. Interesting.
Yeah.
I
So
wouldn't have thought that.
this is my favorite example is really early in my career. I love this story. I had my first agent sent me downtown this huge voiceover thing. I'd never gone anywhere to audition for voiceover before, so I was like really excited. And I was like the Hancock building or something. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel so cool, And like I go in, and it's an older spec, so I'm like by far the youngest guy there. And I'm in my 20s, and everyone in there is at least 15 years older, probably 20 years older than I am. And they all have these three-piece suits on, and then they're all going to the wall, and they're all practicing their cadence. And they all sound like they're Walter Cronkite, and they all have this like very, very cadenced, paced out thing. And the first guy goes in, and he comes out, and then the woman follows, and she goes, hey, I just want to make sure everyone read the specifications for the audition. She goes, it's casual, it's conversational. We're trying to make it. There's two guys talking. It's like two guys drinking a beer in a garage is the spec. And so these guys are going in, and I'm hearing them practice, and they're all sounding like, hey man, pass me a bud. And I'm like, nobody talks like that. And so it was like a skit. Every time someone would walk out of this room, this woman would come out, and with a little more agitated every time, be like, hey, just want to make sure everyone's been reading that spec here. If you read it, go ahead and look at it again and check the email. And finally this happens again, and she comes out and she's got a printed copy. And she goes, I'm just going to put the spec on the board right here. When they walk in, you show them the spec, just make sure to read it. And it was hilarious. And so I go in, and I'm like, I think I get what's happening here. And I do the read, hey, bud, pass me a beer, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And there was this like general relief in the room. And I wound up not getting the gig, but this is something I've never heard of. They called my agent to be like, this kid nailed it. Which for that to happen and not to get a gig, that's the only time that's ever happened in my career.
But for whatever reason.
Yeah, but for whatever reason, they were like, oh, he did good. And he was new, so maybe we should tell, the people at whoever that, yay, good job picking this kid. And it was nice. It was encouraging. And I was like, oh, I think I'm starting to see why me and my friends are taking over this industry. Because they want people who sound like people.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you give people that are listening to this a couple suggestions on how to, well, I'm not going to say voiceover, but just in general about moving forward in a creative arena, leveraging their creative talents and making it happen for themselves?
Trust yourself. I think a lot of people, when I was starting were like, oh, you can't be delusional as an artist, and I'm like, I think a lot of artists know where they're weak. I do. I think a lot of people out there, especially when I'm on the one-on-one and I talk to people and they go, oh, I want to get into voiceover, and they go, but my website's not so good. And then my immediate question is, well, what are you doing about that? You gonna fix it?
That is a good response.
Yeah, it's if your website's not good, is there something on the books? Are you going to plan on doing it? And never mind. I don't know. Well, it's like, well. And I never mean to challenge them or throw a gauntlet down. And I go, well, is this important to you? If it's, I understand it's scary, and there's always that risk of failure, because once you try something, you'll never be able to, then the hypothetical's gone. And then it's like, oh, I failed. But it's like, well, it's the old trying to give you some unique advice, but it's the same old adage of,
no, I'm telling you, I ask all of my guests this, and it ends up being mostly all the same stuff. Because they're true.
Right. The master has failed more times than the beginner has tried, stuff like that. And putting your money where your mouth is something that I see a lot too. And it might be an oversimplification, but an example I usually give is, I had a student once who I had the sense wasn't very serious about it. I think the person just wanted to easy money and thought that was what voiceover was. And I'm talking to them about equipment, and I go, it's a low glass ceiling. You can get everything you need to be a true competitor for $2,000, or you can even do a lot with $500. And they're going, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And 2 days later, they just bought the newest iPhone. And I was like, I don't want to teach you. I was like, I don't think we see the same, and there's nothing wrong with that. Look, if you need that for work, or if technology is important to you, or if that's your joy in life.
But he's showing what he values and what's important in his priorities.
Right. Yeah.
His actions.
Yeah. In my personal career, I had a lot of help, but I also made a lot of sacrifices, and I have trouble. I have trouble sometimes when people who, when I was their age, come to me and go, I want to do this. And I go, well, here's what I did and here's what I gave up. And they're not willing to. It's just kind of like, well, then do something else. No, I'm not hating on you. No negativity. It's just the thing that drives so many people out of this industry isn't talent or ability. It's the lifestyle. And it's
which industry?
Anything in entertainment, anything in the arts.
And what about the lifestyle drives them out?
The fact that their security is there's less security. You don't always know where your next paycheck is coming from. You have to find your own work. Sometimes, how do you work from home? My wife's discovering that she hates working from home. She's like, I feel so lazy. I this is terrible. I'm unmotivated. So you have to then figure out, okay, do I have to get to a cafe? Do I have to do yoga? Do I have to make coffee and do a routine and, get up 2 hours early?
So she's trying to solve the problem or the weakness, I think you had said. Yeah. She's trying to find ways to address it.
Yeah. And sometimes you find out that it's not worth it.
Right.
Or the satisfaction you get from this job that you really like isn't worth the feeling of maybe not having a permanent work community. And then it might be better for you to do it as a hobby. And when I say better, I mean, you might just have a more fulfilling life if you get all that stuff. And I think people look at that as a loss. And that's a shame, I think, to me. Because you don't have to do this full time to be legitimate. I do think there is a distinction between a professional and an amateur, and I think that distinction should be made. And I think it's you owe that to the professional to make the distinction. But to say that one painting is more legitimate than another because it was done by a full-timer versus an amateur. I don't know that I agree with that.
Okay.
And I don't know that to say that this person's happier because they don't have a day job automatically, I don't know if I agree with that either. I like I said, some of the most talented people I know quit because they didn't like the competition and they didn't like putting in all this work for no compensation. They didn't like all the audition preps, and they're much happier with the job and doing community theater. And I'm envious of them sometimes because I'm like, man, you kind of got it made.
Yeah, no, there's trade-offs for everything. And I think that when you are pursuing something like in like what I'm doing or like what you're doing, there's a lot of other stuff associated with it. Yeah. A lot of things that you have to deal with that come with it. It's not all just that thing. Like if you want to be an actor, it's just not all about acting. Yeah. There's all this other stuff. There's the feelings of competitiveness. There's the experience of someone else getting the job that you wanted, seeing other people leapfrog ahead of you, and all of those feelings. And I mean, you're going to experience that in really any job. Yes. But I think sometimes when you are an entrepreneur, or sometimes it can be a little bit more sensitive to it. Yeah,
and adjusting here's a great way to wrap it up. We saw a stand-up comedian the other night, and he's talking about, he's my age, he's 32, or he's 33, and he says, here I am, I'm a 33-year-old, I'm an international comedian, I'm touring, I'm 33, I'm single, and I'm a 33-year-old human following the dreams of a 20-year-old. And it really resonated with me, and I went, that's interesting. And what I took from that whole joke and that whole bit is you have to allow your dreams and stuff to evolve. Because I do know people who have had the dream of being a full-time whatever in the arts at 19, 20, and who have stuck with it, and I know that they would be happier if they let that dream evolve. Yeah. Because they've trapped themselves into something that they do enjoy, but they're slowly they stop enjoying it, and the bitterness sinks in, and letting those dreams fluctuate a little bit, letting yourself be surprised by your own career and what makes you happy, I think can sometimes lead you out of the career, and it could also sometimes lead you back into it in a better mental state and in a better way of looking at it, and as a more accomplished, just like person who knows how to work.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah. Well, thank you so much it was great meeting you.
It was cool chatting with you.
I think we only spoke for like 5 minutes on the phone before we did this. So it's always wonderful to have these conversations with people that I don't know. Yeah, a perfect stranger.
No, I was listening to you. You asked great questions, man. I'm looking forward to kind of following what happens with you.
All right, cool. Well, thank you.
Man. Yeah, well, cheers.
Where can people learn more about you? Your website or
www.actorjoebianco.com. Lots of
Actor Joe
Bianco. BIANCO.com. Yeah, and there's a surprising amount of silly, ridiculous content on there. So
I love silly, ridiculous content.
Yeah. My friend's like, dang, you got a lot on here. I'm like, well, it's so you hire me. So, yeah, it's pretty fun, man.
All right. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, man.
My name is Ricky McGuckran, and you have been listening to Eager to Know, the podcast. If you haven't already, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join me next week for another Eager to Know podcast.